Be opening your Bibles this morning to the third chapter of Exodus, Exodus chapter 3. Ever since I was a little boy, my two favorite Old Testament stories were the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego story, because I love saying those names. And my second favorite story is what we're going to talk about this morning, and that is Moses and the bush that never burned up. Looking forward to the week and getting to know all of you and visiting together and sharing commonalities and making new friends. And that's what it's supposed to be like in this tie that binds us together. Let's read this morning in Exodus chapter 3, beginning in verse 1. Now Moses was pasturing the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. The angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, and yet the bush was not consumed. So Moses said, I must turn aside and see this marvelous sight, why the bush is not burned up. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. And he said, Do not come near. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place on which you stand is holy ground. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. Then Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and I've given heed to their cry because of their taskmasters, for I am aware of their sufferings, so I have come down to deliver them. Verse 10, Therefore come now, and I will send you to Pharaoh, so that you may bring my people, the sons of Israel, out of Egypt. And Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should bring the sons of Israel out of Egypt? And he said, Certainly I will be with you. Verse 13, Then Moses said to God, Behold, I am going to the sons of Israel, and I will say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you. Now they may say to me, What is his name? What shall I say to them? And God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, Thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, I am has sent me to you. I think one of the saddest things is to look around our culture and to see so many people who are bored. It's not that we don't have anything to do. We have plenty to do. But then again, boredom is not defined by a lack of busyness. Boredom is defined by a lack of life mission. Boredom is defined by a lack of life purpose. So you can have plenty of busy to do and still be bored. I think that's why the video gaming industry is so big. And people get addicted to those things. And yet from a positive side, they do give us a goal. They do give us a mission. It's a mini mission, M-I-N-I, but it is a mission nonetheless. But it is a mission without any risk. And so suddenly I can become a race car driver. Suddenly I can become an assassin. Suddenly I can become a fighter pilot. Suddenly I can become an angry bird. I can do any of those things. And there's no real risk. There's no real adventure. It is 100% entertainment. In 1951, a guy by the name of Ray Bradbury wrote a book called Fahrenheit 451. I had to read that book in high school. And the interesting thing about that book written in 1951 was that Bradbury presented in that book a vision of this futuristic society called the 21st century. And he predicted in that book that the 21st century would become a people that absolutely was obsessed with entertainment. In that book written in 1951, he foresaw and said televisions will become the size of the walls of our homes. That will never happen, you know. Fahrenheit 451. And as he presents this futuristic society of a culture obsessed with entertainment, nobody's happy. People just seem to exist. It's like something is out there is getting ready to destroy them, and no one looks up from their entertainment devices long enough to even notice. And so you fast forward 70 plus decades or more, and we have televisions the size of the walls of our homes. And we binge on entertainment, and we carry movies in our pockets, and we carry music in our pockets, and not a second of the day can go by that if we choose, we cannot be so entertained. And yet, people are bored. If you're bored, you need something that no Netflix series is going to fix, no video game is going to fix, no social media is going to fix, no addictive app on your phone is going to fix. What you need is mission. What you need is purpose. What you need is real. What you need is something that is bigger than you are. What you need is something by which you are more than an observer on a screen. You are a participant, and you're not playing a game. You're in the game, and it's not a game. It's called life. Because you see, God created you on purpose and for a purpose. And he created you to give you purpose and a mission. But before you can find purpose and a mission, there's something you have to see. You have to see what Moses saw. And you have to see that the God we serve is not boring. And so it is that the great I Am reveals himself to Moses as the God of the fire. I got to thinking about this scene, and I wrote down 3 ways. 3 ways God is like fire. So if you're taking notes this morning, it's really complicated. 1, 2, 3. That's it. 3 ways God is like fire. So write this down. Number 1, like fire is both dangerous and attractive. Like fire is both dangerous and attractive, so is the holiness of God. I say that because when you see fire, you are just automatically drawn to it. There's something about fire that just grabs your attention and pulls you in, and yet you understand I have to be careful. If I get too close to the fire, I get burned. So what is at once attractive is also dangerous, like the holiness of God. Now back to Moses in Exodus chapter 3. Moses was busy. Moses was a sheep herder. Moses had a job to do. Moses had a responsibility to fulfill. Sheep herding is not exactly an 8 to 5, 5 day a week, clock in, clock out, weekends off kind of job. So Moses is busy. He doesn't lack for something to do. What Moses lacked is what a lot of us lack. We lack mission and purpose. And so God's going to take care of that. Verse 2, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, and yet the bush was not consumed. The fire catches his eye. Moses turns aside to investigate the fire, and as he begins to draw nearer, God called to him from the midst of the bush, verse 4, and then in verse 5, God said, "Stop! Do not come near." Don't get any closer. And he said, in fact, take off your shoes, for the place on which you stand is holy ground. Let's unpack the holy ground part first. We struggle with the word holy because we tend to think, in our minds, holy goes to pretentious. You heard somebody say about another person, "Oh, she thinks she's so holier than thou." We know what that means. Well, that's not what this means. God is a different kind of holy. God is a whole nother kind of holy. God is a set-apart kind of holy, which gets to the core of what the word holy even means. And so rather than holier than thou, in our God we have one who is holy art thou. In other words, holiness is who he is. Holiness is his character. Holiness is his nature. We read in the New Testament, our God is a consuming fire. What happens to something when you throw it in the fire? It is consumed. It is burned. It is destroyed. And as Moses begins to draw near to the fire, that's why God says, "Stop." Because the combination of God's holy fire and your unholy life will kill you. So you better respect his holiness. How many of you have ever been to the Grand Canyon? Raise your hand. Okay. Nobody goes to the Grand Canyon and stands out in the parking lot and says, "I think I see it over there." We get to the Grand Canyon, we pile out of the car, we go walking towards the Grand Canyon, and yet the closer we get to the Grand Canyon, all of a sudden we begin to realize, wait a minute, there's no fence. There's no guardrail. Parents start grabbing on the kids, grandparents start grabbing on the grandkids, we start holding hands. The National Park Service, bless their hearts, puts up this sign that says, "Don't go past this sign or you'll die." Something like that. So you understand, we want to get as close to the Grand Canyon as we can, but we have to respect it. I love the story of the parents who were taking their little girl on a cross-country trip, and they bought her a journal, and they said, as we go across the United States, we're going to see all kinds of historical things and natural things, and every day when you go to bed, write down some things that impress you. And so day after day, they did all of this, and the little girl never wrote anything until the Grand Canyon. And she rushes back to the car, and she opens her journal, and she writes just feverishly and furiously. And when she went to bed that night, the curiosity of the parents, they couldn't take it. So they found her journal, and they opened it, and this is what it said. "Today, I spitted a mile." So the next time you go to the Grand Canyon, but we understand that you have to respect it. Respect. It's the same with God. Moses is staring at the fire. Moses is mesmerized by the fire, but he can't go in. Because what is beautiful to behold, what is captivating to behold, is also deadly. And that's why there can be no such thing as a bored Christian, as a lukewarm kind of Christian, as a take it or leave it kind of Christian. Because our God and his holiness is too attractive, yet dangerous to be boring. If God is boring to you, it only means one thing. You have never come close enough to the awe of his holiness. Why not? Well, maybe it's because our brains are just so planted in screen world that we stop to notice his world and his word. And we miss this very intimate connection with him. And I'll tell you what happens. When you lose a sense of who God is, you lose a sense of who you are. And when you lose a sense of who you are, here's what happens. We start remaking God in our image. And when we start remaking God in our image, God gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and we get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then one day we wake up and we're all perturbed. Because God's not running the world the way I think it ought to be run. And rather than being grateful for what we have, we become entitled. And I got news for you. It's not about you. It's about him. I tell you what, next time you go to the Grand Canyon, here's an experiment. You see all these tourists, and they're oohing and ahhing over the Grand Canyon. I tell you what you do. Step around the side of them where you can kind of see them and see their faces and get their attention and say, hey, everybody, look at me. I want you to see how important I am. And they're going to look at you like you're an idiot, because you would be an idiot. Nobody goes to the Grand Canyon to look at you. It's not about you. It's about God. It's like nobody goes to the zoo. You ever go to the zoo? Nobody goes to the zoo to see the dachshund exhibit. You know, the wiener dogs? Nobody goes up to the zookeeper and says, where's the dachshund exhibit? They don't have a dachshund exhibit. We don't go to the zoo to see dachshunds. We go to the zoo to see lions and tigers and bears. Why? Because lions and tigers and bears will rip your face off. And we are attracted to that. But we don't want to get too close to that. And we have to respect it. I don't know why you're here this morning. But I'm going to venture to say there's some people here and people around the world who show up on a first day and sing songs and pray prayers and all of that, and they just sort of go through the routine and the motions of worship, not really into it. It's kind of like they've shown up to see the dachshund exhibit. When before us is a God whose holiness is beyond what we can even imagine. The one who made a fiery sun so bright that you cannot even look at it. The sun itself is wholly attractive, but it is wholly dangerous. And the same God who set the sun where it is, the same God seeks to light a fire within each of us. Didn't we just sing the song? Light the fire. Where? In my heart today. Secondly, write this down. Like fire is intimate. Like fire is intimate, so is the love of God. Did you ever build a campfire? There's something about a campfire that just draws us in. There's a sense of coziness. There's a sense of intimacy. When I think campfire, I think of friends and s'mores, you know? We did this crazy thing when our kids got older and married and left the house. And we had all these rooms, and Julie said, let's adopt some kids. And I said, what? She said, let's adopt some kids. And I said, okay. I was a little slower on the uptake than she was, so we ended up doing that. And we ended up adopting internationally from Bulgaria over in Eastern Europe, and we adopted 3 siblings who were 15, 12, and 11. And we spent a lot of time with them over there on multiple trips, and then we finally adopted them and brought them to the States. And it was interesting, when we brought them to the States, they didn't speak any English, none. They knew all the rock and roll songs. They knew all their songs, pop songs. They knew all of those. They knew the words because they play the same music over there that our kids play here. They just didn't know what the words meant. And so we bring them to the United States, and they couldn't speak any English. And so it was fun watching them progress, and they progressed amazingly fast. But I remember about the day number 2 or 3 they were with us, I said, come on outside, I'm going to make s'mores. And they said, what's a s'more? And I said, you'll see. So we had a fire, we made s'mores, and I handed it to them. They took one bite, and they said, I want some more. I said, there you go. You know? But it was fun watching them learn English. And sometimes they would get the nuances of the language all confused, and that would be very easy to do. I'd hate to have to, as an adult, hate to learn English because it's a crazy language. But anyway, we're sitting there at the dinner table one night, and by this point in time, Leah had been there long enough, and she'd begun to date a boy at church. And it was the first night Jacob came over to eat with us. And so he was kind of quiet and shy, and so she was 16 then, and so we're passing food around, and Leah broke the silence trying to make conversation. As we're passing food around, she says in front of all of us, I'm feeling frisky. I said, what? She said, I'm feeling frisky. And Jacob, you could see the red on his face. I said, well, that ends this relationship, you know. And I said, what do you mean frisky? She says, doesn't that mean happy? And I said, well, not exactly. So we had to have a little English 101 lesson right there. We had to have a lot of those. So we're sitting around the campfire, and we're just hanging out, trying to get better acquainted, better to know each other, and just be more relaxed. Because there's something about a campfire that's cozy. And yet the same fire that is cozy, the same fire that warms you on a fall evening, can kill you. So here's the problem. God's not going to turn down the heat of His holiness. God's not going to make the fire of His holiness less hot so you can come to Him. God's not going to change Himself. He's going to change you. He's going to make a way for you to come to the fire without getting burned. I don't know why I haven't seen this before. It's right there in the text. Verse 7 and verse 8. The Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and I've given heed to their cry because of their taskmasters, for I am aware of their sufferings. So I have come down to deliver them. Do you understand the ultimate? God coming down to deliver them wouldn't happen for centuries? To be fulfilled later in Jesus? John 1 and verse 14, who became flesh, came down, became flesh, and dwelt among us. And so the same God who said to Moses, you tell them I am, is used by Jesus when He said, unless you believe that I am, you will die in your sins. Jesus is the I am. Listen to Him. I am the way and the truth and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. The only way that you can approach the fire of God's holiness and not be consumed is because of Him. He took death for you. In a sense, He was burned for you. He died for you. Why? 2 Corinthians 5 and verse 21, so that you might become the righteousness of God in Him. Not you, Him. God takes sin seriously. God takes His holiness seriously. So the only way you can come into the presence of His holiness is through Jesus. Because Jesus offers forgiveness. Jesus offers holy purifying. And when that happens, ladies and gentlemen, in a sense, he sets you on fire. And in a sense, you become like the bush that doesn't burn up. Not because of you, but because of him. What was it Jeremiah said? There's a fire burning in my bones. What'd the song say? Light the fire in my heart today. Like fire is intimate, so is the love of God. And third, like fire fuels motion, so is the power of God. Your car will not move without power. It has to have fuel of some sort. And with most vehicles, there's the fuel and there's the spark of a plug. And when that spark of fire hits that fuel, there is explosion motion. That's what happens. And it was the same with Moses. Moses is running on empty until God filled his tank and gave him a spark of life mission and life purpose. And when that happened, there was explosion motion because God said, go. And Moses eventually went. Point being, nothing explodes until it's lit. And God lit him up. And God will light you up. Because once you see the fire of God's holiness, and once you are consumed with the fire of God's love, then the fire of his purpose and the fire of real life mission explodes in your heart, and it changes you forever. Luke 24 and verse 32, the passage we talked about in the very beginning of our morning. These two men walking along the road, and after Jesus revealed himself to them, they looked at each other and they said, were not our hearts, listen carefully, were not our hearts burning within us when he spoke to us on the way? Or how about Acts chapter 2, verses 1, 2, and 3, when on the day of Pentecost, tongues as a fire came down and rested upon the apostles. And if you read Dr. Luke's account of the rest of the Acts of the apostles, they took that fire and they went out and turned the world upside down. Which begs the question, are you on fire? Or are you just going through the motions? You know, we're supposed to be a group of people set on fire. Because if there's no fire, there's no mission. If there's no mission, there's no church. And all that's left is a group of bored people who get together on a Sunday and sing about a fire they wish they had. We need to pray, God, light us up. Light up our hearts and set us on fire. Help us embrace your Son and help us be like that bush that doesn't burn up. Because, folks, I'm here to tell you, we're not on this earth to be entertained. That's not why we're here. We're not here to just keep our eyes constantly locked upon a screen. We're not here to be amused. We are here on mission. Go and make disciples of all the nations. Go and live a life of hope. Go and live a life of faith. And go and show the people God places in your path that there is a way, that there is a hope, that there is a life. And it's all about Jesus. We have a mission and we have a purpose. God, light us up so that we don't burn up, so that we stay focused, on what this life is all about. I was told I could preach till 12. The older I get, I think the shorter I preach. Because, back when you're in your 20s, you know everything. And then the older you get, the more you realize, I don't know half of what I used to know. Thanks for this first day. I love the way y'all do your mornings. I love starting off with these songs and remembering why the first day is so important. And we weren't rushed through that. And to have the Bible classes that we can all interact and the kids can be with their peers and be taught on a level that they understand and then be together for this hour of quiet worship. I hope God is pleased. And I hope all of us walk out of here edified and encouraged and strengthened by just the morning on this first day of the week that we've had together and shared together. This is a blessing. Let us never forget. We sing the song, and if you owe duty to God in some kind of way, maybe you need to become a Christian. Maybe you need to stand and confess your faith in Jesus and be buried in baptism. Maybe you need to respond and come back to the Lord because you've wandered away. Maybe you're going through the hardest of the hard times of life, and you just need to know I'm not walking alone, that others love me, and I just need to tell people I need your prayers. Because we're not here to hurt anybody. We're here to help people. Church is family. That's what family does. We love each other, and we help each other, even through the hardest of the hards. Won't you come while we stand and sing the song?
I hear thy welcome.